Hello, hello. Welcome to Mindset to Results. Today, our guest is Ben Brearley. He is a leadership coach and trainer helping thoughtful leaders who are reflective and introverts to lead without pretending who they are not. Yes, so to lead effectively and being who they are. Such a great topic today. Hi, Ben.
Hi, Elena. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, you're welcome. You're welcome. It is so good to have you today because this topic, I think, will be very beneficial for many people who are listening to us. Yes, because in this competitive world, uh, some people think that extroverts have more advantages because they can be more more convenient to speak with people, communicate, to be more
Yeah,
outside. And people who are introverts, they can feel like maybe it is something that they have to pretend and be somebody like others. So today is
yep.
a very important topic to discuss for our audience. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, thank you. I started off my career in the IT industry many years ago, and I was in technical software development roles as a programmer. Moved into leadership roles pretty quick, so team leadership, and did a lot of project and program management work. Did a big stint in consulting as well for some of the big consulting companies, and then went into middle management roles from there. So yeah, I did about 16 years in leadership positions altogether, and then slowly transitioned into leadership coaching and training, which I've been doing for about the last 5 years now. And I started a website years ago called Thoughtful Leader. That was about 10 years ago actually, and I was just um, writing blog posts and that sort of thing. And I started podcasting about 5 years ago, and gradually built a bit of an audience, and then people wanted me to coach them, and so then I got my coaching qualifications and started coaching people. So that's how I gradually transitioned into the coaching space over time.
Yes, great. So why you choose this topic? I mean, to work. This area to work with leaders who are introverts. Does it resonate with you because you went through that experience yourself?
Hmm. Yeah, absolutely. So I'm definitely an introvert, which I didn't say in my background, but um, yeah, I found there's a tendency for, as you mentioned in the intro, people to be extroversion is more popular. It's people regard extroverts as better leaders in general. Um, Not always, but I still think it's a something that society generally believes. And so, but I think, and definitely in my leadership career, there was a few challenges that arose because I was quieter potentially than other people, in other leadership positions. But I find that thoughtful, sort of reflective or introverted people often make excellent leaders because they are often people focused. They listen. They're quite supportive. They think before they speak, and and they usually plan before they do things. And I think that can create really good results in workplaces. And I think there's a mixture. You need a mix. You need a balance of extroverts and introverts. I'm not saying that we want introverted, quiet people everywhere. I think the balance is what's important. But I think that some quieter people could be excellent leaders, but they hold themselves back and they don't put themselves forward and get to those senior positions because they feel low on confidence or feel like maybe leadership wasn't built for them, for example. And so I try to help those leaders feel more confident and lead so they can step up and do good work. I just think we need a little bit more of that quieter leader in the workplaces these days, especially, with all the events over the last couple of years. It's pretty crazy around the world, and I think a bit of thoughtfulness would help.
Mm-hmm. Does it mean that extroverts are not thoughtful?
Oh, that's a good question. Not necessarily, but extroverts are often they're often uh, they're often their bias for action. They want to do stuff. So often they want to take action and get results and move fast, which is not necessarily a bad thing, can be very good depending on what the situation is. Um, I think that in general, I'd say extroverts tend to do act first and think later. And especially sometimes they think before so they speak before they think. And that's not to say they can't think, be thoughtful, but I think sometimes they have a tendency to do that. And obviously, I'm stereotyping here because introversion, extroversion lies on basically a standard deviation or a bell curve. So essentially, most of us will be in the middle part of that curve, which means we have tendencies of both extroverts and introverts. So not many people are pure introverts or pure extroverts. We're always a mix of these things.
Mhm. Yes, tell us, please, what challenges extroverts face? If we think
Extroverts or introverts?
introverts, yes, when we think about them as people who are driven, they want to achieve something big. Yes, they have goals, and on the
Mm.
other way, they think like they are closed. Yes, sometimes they uh, have problems with communication. What other challenges did you see during your experience?
Yeah, I find that it depends on the type of introvert, but the ones that I work with are often quite thoughtful. They're people-focused people, so they value relationships and they want their teams to feel supported and all those good things. So there's a couple of challenges I find is one of them is they may think too much before they do something. So I talked about extroverts before who may act first and then think later. Sometimes introverts can be spend too much time thinking or planning before doing anything, which is obviously a bad thing as well because you might be too slow to act on a situation, for example. So that's one thing that sometimes happens. Another common one is, being spoken over, so not being heard. So you might have good ideas, but if you're a quieter person and you can't express them effectively, then people might not be able to have the benefit of those ideas, so you might not be heard. Um, so that's another challenge they have. And I think I find confidence is a common challenge with introverts. Not to say that everyone can have confidence problems, but because the working world is still, I feel, quite extroverted, you sometimes introverts will shy away from doing things they need to do to succeed. So, for example, if you want to give a presentation, someone who's an extrovert might feel more comfortable doing that, speaking in front of everyone. An introvert might say, "Well, I don't think I want to do that. I won't do that." So they can limit their opportunities. So I find there are some of the common problems. And one more is setting boundaries, I think, is a big one, especially for thoughtful type leaders who they want to help their teams and they want to they can fall into people pleasing, which might be where they say yes to everything. So people say, "Oh, can you do this? Can you help me out?" "Oh, yeah, we'll do that." Obviously, the problem with that is you can burn out, take on too much work, and so that I find that's a common challenge as well. Thank you.
So it is like they want to compensate something that they feel that they are like more deprived. Yes, because of those inner battles which they have, like stickler, which want to do everything right and think long,
Mm.
and then it is like compensate with pleasing people. Yes, to do something extra to feel that they are there for good. Yes, that they have impact and they create value.
Yeah, and sometimes it's just about they really value. It depends on the introvert, right? So some people are very technical and they love they're quieter leaders, but they're very technical, attention to detail and all those sorts of things. Some others are very much relationship focused and they want to support their team and help people out. They're probably the ones that fall into the helpfulness trap more often because they don't want people to, let's say some of their team are stressed, they might jump in and do some of the work for them, right? They might or take on things that aren't their responsibility because they don't want their people to feel bad. So that's what I mean by that. Yeah, some of the ones that are more people focused sometimes have that approach.
Yeah, thank you so much for sharing. So what can help them? Yes, what can help them to get confidence and develop that confidence to speak and to lead better and don't feel that they are less somehow than extroverts.
Yeah. I think a common thing I notice is that when people feel lack confidence, they sort of don't understand their strengths, like their or what their values are. So what I do with a lot of my clients is I do a lot of values work with them at the start when I work with them. So personal values are obviously strong beliefs of the things that are important to us. So, for example, values can be, integrity, honesty, family, all these sorts of things, right? There's hundreds of them, obviously, and they'll be different for everyone. And they're quite stable as well, which means they generally don't change too much over time. They can change if something dramatic happens, but often they're quite stable things. So they're a really useful tool to understand your own values because they stay similar throughout your life generally. So one of the things I find is when people understand their own values and they understand themselves a lot better, they start to gain a bit of self-acceptance on how they are and what they believe and what they stand for. And that helps them make decisions, and it also helps them to know the situations where they're likely to struggle, and they know the situations where they're likely to do really well. And so they can, to some degree, you can create an environment where you're able to do your best work, and you can limit the times when you might struggle, for example. So I think that's one of the key things, that self-understanding.
Yes, yes. Self-esteem is very important because when people accept themselves as they are and focus on their strength, it gives them more confidence and
Mm.
understanding that they can be who they are, yes, and show to the world who they are, and they don't need to pretend to be someone else.
Yeah, absolutely.
And what can help with communication? Because I know some introverts which really have a difficulty to communicate, even if they want something, they sometimes may not even think that they have to tell that. And when extrovert is in in the same situation, he just will
Mm.
go and straight to tell what he wants. So how do you usually help people with that to improve communication and to stand for your rights, for your what you want to say, and communicate with
Yeah,
people openly?
I think partially it's a practice thing. So, and being more aware of the people around you and what they need as well. So sometimes, as you mentioned, we can not communicate. Maybe we don't tell anyone anything. We don't communicate what we need to, or we might communicate in the wrong way, for example. So I think it's around having a bit of that social awareness and building those relationships with people. Um, so building strong, trusting relationships in the workplace is a big help for that. And I think it's about your style as well. So an introvert, for example, is probably going to be more comfortable speaking in smaller meetings, smaller forums, maybe one-on-one conversations, for example, than a crowded meeting room with lots of people in there. That's not to say you can't do that, but it's just not the normal environment they're comfortable in generally. So on that note, sometimes it's about choosing your communication channel. So whether you have a one-to-one coffee catch up with someone, for example, just to take them through something so you can communicate on a way that suits you a bit better. Um, I think sometimes if it's about assertiveness, so for example, someone might be staying silent because maybe they're not confident in what they're saying, or they don't, they need some courage to stand up and say something. I think that personal values, if you come back to your values, that can be really important as well. So, for example, if one of your values is, honesty or something like that, then you can say, okay, well, how would you communicate if you were being true to your values right now? Well, I would tell them what I think, right? So you can use your values as motivation to help you take action. Another concept I find really useful, which came from a professor called Brian Little. I think he's retired now, but he talks about personal projects. And what this means is these are the things you're passionate about in the world. So it could be your family or your research or your job or whatever it is, right? And so these are similar to values in a way, but they're maybe slightly different. So his example that he used was he's a super introvert, so he's not a natural speaker, but he's very passionate about his research. So he forces himself to give presentations, and I think he does TED Talks and things as well. So because it's passion of his. So what he says is if you change your style, so you adapt in the service of furthering one of your personal projects, then you're more likely to be able to sustain that change, that adapting your style. But if you're just changing your style because you feel like you have to, or so let's say, for example, you are a lawyer, right? And so you have to go into court, and when you speak in front of everyone, it makes you stressed because you're an introvert. It's not your natural thing. If you're not really passionate about being a lawyer and you actually don't really like it, but you force yourself to speak and be extroverted, then that's more likely to drain you and lead you down the path of burnout. Whereas if you are passionate about being a lawyer and you know that, well, I have to do this to be a lawyer and I really love it, then you're more likely to be able to do that without burning out because you're doing it for a purpose. So I really like that concept as well, thinking about what are your personal projects where you will choose to speak up or stand up for yourself or give a presentation or whatever it is.
Mm-hmm. Yes, yes, to find that fuel, yeah, fuel which
Yeah,
give you extra motivation and excitement to be excited. Yes, when you're excited about something, it helps to overcome the
absolutely.
challenges.
Yeah,
And also for people who have extroverts and introverts in their team, also it is important to understand that everyone has their strength. Yes,
mm,
and depend on that, people can do different tasks in a company. Yes, and
absolutely.
if extroverts are good for presentations, it doesn't mean that introvert is has less value because he can be good in something else. Yes, so
Mm,
it is good when people really are in the zone of their strength. Yes, so they don't
yeah,
do like constantly overload themselves and feel uncomfortable. Yes, so on one side, it is good to stretch yourself and work because I mean on communication, improving because anywhere and when you work with people, you need those skills. Yes, and on the
yep,
other side, it is also important to know your strength. Where is your strength?
yep,
And be be good in where you are. Yes, and not thinking that you are less value than somebody else.
yeah, absolutely. And I think you hit on a really good point there. It's good to stretch yourself, but you don't want to be stretching yourself all the time. Like, so you have to pick your battles, right? And I think
Mhm.
one of the challenges that sometimes people fall into is they'll say, well, I'm not confident in speaking because I'm an introvert, so I won't speak. I just won't volunteer to give that presentation, for example. And that can be really limiting because obviously you're not in front of people, you're not taking that opportunity. So what I do recommend is to look at your limitations or your weaknesses and find out what they are, and then actually do some work to try to improve them where they're important. So for example, I mean, on that note, when I started my consulting career, I was very scared of public speaking, but I knew I would have to speak in front of, directors and executives and give presentations. And so I thought, well, I better get better at this because otherwise I'm going to limit myself, right? And so I ended up going to a Toastmasters club, like a public speaking group, for 2 years. So I got more comfortable in speaking. So it became less of a weakness and I wasn't worried about it anymore. And so I think we do have to improve those areas where we're not so strong sometimes, because it helps us take on opportunities. So I think that's something to be aware of as well.
Yes, yes, definitely. And another area is conflict solving. Yes, conflict solving, because in every company there are people, and conflicts are also part of the journey. And introverts have very difficulty, yes, feel difficult to solve conflicts, to speak to people. And I know some company owners who have conflict, and they ask somebody else to come and solve the conflict because they don't feel that they can do that. So what would you suggest for such people who think that they need somebody else, or how they can improve that?
So I think the challenge with the conflict, yeah, it's a good point. Sometimes people will avoid conflict, um, because they think, and I think there's a bit of a link here with introversion and stimulation as well. So, for example, if you're a quieter person or an introvert, you might avoid high stimulation environments. And so a conflict situation can be high stimulation, especially if someone gets angry and emotional, right? For example. And so they can be daunting. Now, I think it's a bit of reframing as well, though. With I think a bit of reframing can help here as well. So sometimes when you're about to go in a conflict situation and you don't want to do it, you might think of things like, well, what will happen if I don't do anything about this situation, right? So obviously the answer could be, well, it'll get worse and nothing will happen. The other question to ask yourself, and especially if you're a bit of a people-pleasing leader, where you don't want to engage in the conflict and tell them they're doing the wrong thing because you feel bad about hurting their feelings, for example, you might switch that around and think, well, isn't it, am I doing them a disservice by not tackling the problem? Because I'm not giving them the feedback where they could improve, for example. Another way to think about it is, well, if I don't have this conversation, what does the rest of my team think about this? And sometimes the answer is, well, the rest of your team can see that you're not doing anything about it, and therefore they might think that you're not a good leader as well. So their reputation can be damaged. So there's a couple of different things you can do there in terms of reframing the situation, I think, as well. But also remember that introverts, for example, have some pretty good strengths as well in terms of listening. They can be quite supportive. They can ask good questions because they're paying attention. They're generally speaking um, less often, and therefore they can listen. They can listen more attentively and pay attention and ask good questions and really get to the bottom of issues. So I think that's and being curious about the other person's situation. And I think that's one of the keys for these difficult conversation is being able to find out the other person's point of view and trying to dig deeper into what's led to this for them and how are they seeing the situation. So introverts can actually be really good at that because they're good at asking questions. They can listen more. Yeah.
Yes, so they just have to make decision to do that, yes, and not
Mm.
postponing. Because if we combine all together, like being introvert, being people pleaser, and also being a stickler, what they call when people plan and plan and plan,
Yeah.
so all together can make them to postpone important things. Yes, because they
Yeah.
want to get involved and then postpone thing, and this is they never solve. And we know that if the problems are not solved, they become bigger. Yes, so it is
Yeah.
about attitude, maybe. Yes, about attitude, and create the habit, to work on the habit. Like something happens, whatever you feel, you go and speak about it, discuss it. Yes,
Yeah.
and not
I,
let that saboteurs to tell you, because also it is, I think, important when people identify those inner voices, which the same, that speak the same, yes, like for example stickler, or that people pleaser, because it is like the same voices which people have. And when they identify those voices and separate them from themselves, and can
Mm.
say that, oh, this is that, like, people pleaser is speaking, but what
Mm.
I want to have. So not to be in that loop, because of course, yes, we know that people are certain like introverts, they have certain like features, yes, but also what I know from my practice is that it is not only about them, it is also about the programs which have been built in their subconscious mind, which they were young.
Yeah.
Something happened in the childhood, some trauma when they were told something, yes, and this is how they believed. And those so-called saboteurs, they uh, abuse that strength that people have. They
Yeah.
use that, and this is how it became the same voices, and people think that those voices are them. And when they start
Yeah.
separating and understand this is just a program, and what can I do about this? Is it helping me, this program? If I just going on automatic behavior, this program will just continue telling me the same, like a recorded tape. And what I can do. So when they separate themselves from that voice, it also helps them to get in control and understand that they're not
Mm.
just that program. They have bigger potential, and they can separate that and say, okay, I listened to you before, so now I want to do that, what they know that
Yeah.
is important.
Yeah. That's a really good point as well. It's like the that self-talk, that inner voice you have going on. And I think I came across this a book. I think it was called The Happiness Trap. A few years ago, I read that, and it was like one of the things they said in there were thoughts aren't facts. So I like that. It's quite a cool one to remember that I remember, which is, okay, I might be thinking these things, but just because I'm thinking that doesn't mean that it's a fact and I have to agree with it. Because we know that we can think some strange things, that pop into our heads. But once again, I feel like it's comes back to values as well in terms of motivating. And you mentioned before, you've almost got to motivate yourself to have the conversation. So, for example, one of my values, the reason I'm looking up there is because my values are on the wall there. So one of them I wrote is one of my values is what I call potential, which is about improving and growing and getting better all the time. And so if I'm going to try to motivate myself to have a difficult conversation, I might say, well, if I don't have this conversation, then I'm not getting better at having conversations like this. But also, I'm not helping the other person improve either because I'm not following through and giving them the feedback or whatever it is that has to be done. So I think you can use your own values to try to help you motivate yourself as well when you feel worried about something, or going back to that personal projects and things like that as well.
Yes, yes, so good, exactly. That people can write the problem, yes, and on the paper to take it out of head, because
Mm.
when it is in the head, sometimes they don't understand that this is just a program. Yes, this is just how
Mm.
they just think the same, they feel the same, act the same. So when they take
Yeah.
it out of their head and write, this is the problem, yes, and then it is a very good technique which I learned from my mentor Bob Proctor, and he said that take it out from your head and write it on the paper, put it in the middle of the table, sit on one chair and think like you think about this, and then
Mm.
go around the table sitting from the next side and think like if you would be the person which you like your role model or somebody you admire or somebody you want to follow, how he would
Mm.
look at that problem, and then
Yeah.
again move to sit from another side and think how another person would think and look at this problem, and having these different perspectives also help to understand and find the solution. Yes, this is very good way to
Mm.
come out of your own head.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that. Yeah. Those reflection questions, getting into how would someone else approach this situation. I love that. I also love similar one I use is what advice would you give someone that you respect um, if they had this situation going, and often we can give our advice, but we don't take our own advice. So sometimes that's a good thing to do as well.
Yes, yes, thank you so much for sharing. So, if we summarize everything and let's say three takeaways that our listeners can take with them from this conversation, what will be the three important things that they can do to improve their communication and leadership?
Yeah, I think the first one is doing some values work if they haven't done it before. So these sort of things are quite common in terms of, okay, usually you get a big list of values, you pick your top ones, and I've got a bit of a process that I follow to help people think about their values a little bit better. Um, and so I'd recommend doing some of that values work as well, just understanding your core values, but also what do they mean? So you dig a bit deeper. So, for example, if one of your values is family, what does that mean for your leadership? Well, it might mean that it means that you're going to prioritize making sure you have work-life balance because you want to make sure that you have enough time with your family as well as your leadership role. So these are the sort of things I mean. You try to get the, what the so what of the value. So make it a bit more practical. So I'd say number one, do that values work. Number two, I would say identify what your limitations are, your weaknesses, for example. And I think the one way you can do that is you can do lots of personality assessments and psychometric tests and all these things to help you. But I think another way is just to think about the situations you struggle with at work or in life, where you feel least confident or where you worry a lot, for example. They're really good situations where you can identify some of your potential limitations. And I'd say for the ones that you think might hold you back, do some practice or training in those areas. So basically, make sure you're working on your limitations if you think they're going to hold you back. So don't just avoid them, start to lean into them and stretch yourself in those areas. So I think that's a couple. Third one I suggest is to your point as well, you raised the idea of sitting on the chair and changing your position around the table to think of things in different ways. I would say engage in some structured reflection. So I'm a big fan of having a journal with specific questions in it and writing out the answers. So, what happened? How did I feel about that? What would I do differently next time? All these things. And then spending time every week to reflect back on what's happened during the week, and you identify patterns of behavior where you find yourself where you struggle or where you do really well, and you can reflect on that and keep getting better and better. So I'd say spending that time to yeah, have that reflection time is a really useful thing to do as well. They're my top three I would give you.
Yeah, thank you so much. Yes, all of them are so important. Yes, because our the way how we think and make decision is much based on our values, and knowing the values will help to understand
Yeah.
why we make that decision or that decision. Yes, because and also questioning the values, right? Because some values, we think that they are values, but if we start questioning them and start going deeper and see, is it really what is my value, and see how it affects my behavior, what if I change that value?
Yeah.
Yes, for example, for me interesting was when I was in Tony Robbins this 3-day program, UPW,
Mhm.
popular one. So yeah, there we did this value understanding, that value core values process. And interesting thing that before I thought that certainty is a good value, but
Mm.
after this event, I questioned that. Is it really my value? Because I understood the different part of that. Because if we want certainty to be value, it means that we will miss so many opportunities, because everything new is uncertain. The growth is
Yeah.
uncertain. If you have big goals, you have to grow, and the only way you can grow it is when you step into uncertain and you take that faith and you step out of your comfort zone. And there will be a
Mm.
lot of fear and doubt. Yes, because our brain doesn't know anything in future. It just knows in the past. So I really started questioning my value, and then I shifted. I shifted my
Yeah.
values, and I found like impact, love. Yes, it was more my values having impact, and creating that value, becoming change myself and help other people change, it became my bigger value than just having stability and certainty.
Yeah. That's an interesting one. And I think, yeah, and even if you have a value like that, there's always a pro and a con to each value as well. There can be positive things, but also things that'll hold you back. So you got to know what they are. Yeah, I agree.
Yes, because some people can have values, but it is not that they choose those values because
Mm,
it was just programmed from the childhood or
yeah.
school, like study well, you will get job, you want to have stability, want to have security. And when it is repeated so many times, it just gets suppressed in, like impressed to our subconscious mind, and people start thinking that this is their value, this is what they want to be. But when
Mm,
they start reflecting and saying, is it really how they live with those values? Is it really what they want in life? And then
yeah.
question them and say, no, I want big goals. So if I want really big goals, if I want to achieve something, if I'm not just be average, yes, like I want to be somebody and who I really meant to be, this is how we start
Mm,
seeing, okay, so my values should be this, and this. And when we
mm,
change those values, this is how our thoughts will change because we will start thinking different from what is really important. And when we change our thoughts, feelings will be different. We will be more excited and inspired with that big vision. And of course, as a result, our actions will be different and results will be different.
yeah. That's about, yeah, changing your values and working on, okay, these might be my values, but what do I want them to be and how do I want to be? Yeah, absolutely. So that's inner work that you have to do.
Yes, and also what you said, also I wanted to emphasize that you said that some people speak faster than they think. Yes, it is not only for extroverts, because from one
Mm,
book, Outwitting the Devil from Napoleon Hill, I learned this thing that only 2% of people think, 3% of people think that they think, and 95% of people would rather die than think. So not
yeah.
yeah, it is very interesting statistics, but that book was written 100 years ago, and I don't think anything changed today. Also, that most of
Mm,
people they really live in that hypnotic state, what means that they live according those patterns in their subconscious
yeah.
mind, those reactions. So reactions happen faster than people even have time to think. So they hear
Mm,
something, they immediately answer, or they can think if it is introvert, they just think for themselves the same, right? So
yeah.
really important to think and to start really separating those programs which were written by somebody else, maybe by ancestors which we never knew, because all
Mm,
also we inherit in genes so much that is how we look similar to our parents. Yes, so it is not just physical appearance which we inherit,
yeah.
but also there are a lot of how why we behave, why we make decisions. This could something that we even eat. We eat it and like it just because our parents like that food and they were giving us, and through repetition we started liking this food, right? So
Yeah, absolutely.
if we were in China, we would like something different.
Mm,
Right, so it is really questioning these programs and understanding that you are not a program. You're not a
yeah.
program. There is something running your life on autopilot, which was said by other people, and now it is time to really waken up and to see, okay, I am here today. Am I happy? Am I happy if I just continue running the same programs? It will be the same result. Do I want to live like this all my life? If the answer
Yeah.
is no, this is the time to question, because yes, it is like it is people are divided by different types, different categories. But what I want to also to mention here that whatever type you feel you are much more than that. You have such a huge potential.
Mm,
And when you just start
absolutely.
understanding who you really are, discover yourself, as you said, journaling, reflecting. Yes, start thinking, start journaling, reflecting why you speak like that, why you do like that. And you will see when you start journaling and reflecting, you will see that there are the same patterns. So it is
Yep.
not Actually, it is not you. Yes, and I believe that everyone who really have the dream, big something, big dream. Yes, as you said, just find a big dream, become passionate about something, become
Mm.
excited, and that fuel will help you to understand who you are, what are your values, and also what you can do if you start reprogramming your subconscious mind, because a lot of that what you think about yourself is not actually who you are. It is just those
Yeah.
programs which you carry with them, and people told you that you are introvert, for example. People told you that
Hmm.
you are not that person who can do something like extrovert, and that you just believed. And because you believe
Yeah.
it is you, you just carry this and you say, I am introvert, I cannot do, I can only do this, I can only sit.
Yeah.
But yes, so when you
Mm.
believe who you
Um,
are and understand that but your potential is so big, so huge, this is when all the
I
change.
think that, yeah, I think there's an aspect of working with yourself, as in the way you are, the traits you have, but then also not being bound by them. Like you mentioned before, the trait, like there's types of people, you either this or that, right? And once we put ourselves in a box, then we limit ourselves. So I think I sort of see it as working with what your qualities you have, and then looking to expand in the areas that you want to, right? Which is to your point, do I want to be, these might be my values, but do I want them to be, and what do I want to be doing instead? So doing that work to try to expand or change as well. Yeah, I think that's really important.
Yes, and last thing that I also wanted to mention here, I
Mm,
believe that self-image is so important, because
mm,
self-image dictates everything in our life, how we speak, how we dress, how we meet people. And
mm.
again, reflecting on self-image, because when we understand that self-image controls everything, what we think about ourselves will control the way how we do everything, right? So again, writing your current self-image, what you think about yourself on one side, and then think who you really want to be, and
Yeah.
understanding that when you change your self-image and when you start thinking as that person who you really want to be, understanding your potential, this also will change so much. Yes, and self-image, you can like actor technique. As we know how actors perform in the movies, they get script, they read the script, repeat the script, and they embody script, they start speaking and becoming that person. And when we
Yeah.
see them in the movie, we don't think that it is like real person is different. We totally see these people as that actor, as that character,
Yeah.
right? And
Yeah.
we just don't even think that in life it is so totally different person. So this is
Mm,
how we can write our new self-image and create
mm.
ourselves by ourselves. Yes, not just carrying all life that self-image which somebody else, like our parents and ancestors or teachers, even when we were small, told us who we are, and
Yeah.
not carry that, but changing and writing, becoming your own like your own producer, your own movie director, and that movie is your life, and you
Mm,
feel that you are that main actor, and you decide who you are, what you want to do in this life, and this will help so much to overcome those challenges which we discussed.
yeah. Nice. I like that.
Yes, so a little bit also, because it is really very important when people understand that they are not just somebody who society put them in that box. Yes, everybody is so unique,
Yeah.
so different, and everyone can, as you said, understand the values, really choose the right values, and be the best who they are without pretending they somebody else, because everyone is so important, like you listeners who listen to us. Yes, believe in yourself, find those values, and know that you are so important, you are so unique, and you can lead with confidence, happiness, and creating so much value for your companies and for society in general.
Yeah, I couldn't said it better.
Yes, thank you so much, Ben. So before we wrap up this episode, what you one thing if you would just say that very important, yes, something that to resume for people who listen to us who are introverts and they want to lead with confidence, what would that be?
I think it's just yeah, I think it's mentioned, we've already sort of discussed it. I think it's about understanding who you are, but then understanding that we're not all fixed. We can change in those positive spaces where we need to. So I think it's but I think it's also about carving out the time and the space for you to regenerate and restore yourself during the day, for example. So don't always play by the rules of the society or the workplace where, oh, we need to be doing 100 things a day. For especially for the introverts out there, carve out that quiet time where you can restore and refresh, which will give you the energy to do all the other things you need to do, which might be about stretching yourself and achieving goals and realizing your potential. So I'd say, um, yeah, that's how I'd summarize that.
Yes, so good that you mentioned that. Yes, love yourself. Yes, love yourself and know who you are, how good you are, and yes, have time and space for yourself to recover. And yeah, it is very important. Thank you so much, Ben,
Yeah,
for being amazing guest at our podcast, and I'm sure that listeners will learn so much from you and your experience. And we also will mention the link for the process how to identify core values, which can help people in the
yeah,
description of this episode.
awesome. Thanks, Elena. It's been a pleasure. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, you're most welcome. Looking forward to see you again.